Hello, everyone. Today we're continuing with our beginner slash JLPT N5 grammar lessons. And we're doing a somewhat shorter one today. We're jumping into requests. Now, we've talked about requests a bit. Specifically, we talked about, I'm going to type it onto the channel for you to see. We have done this one. We did the o kudasai earlier. And what typically would come before the O? Like, what kind of words will we stick in front of that? Just as a quick review, so we can compare it to what we're doing today. What would come before that? Not verbs, definitely not verbs. In fact, you are not allowed to put verbs. Or te form, can't put te form either. It's nouns, only nouns. O is always attached to nouns, and we would use the o kudasai to ask for something. Ask for a physical or non-physical thing. So you might be using this if you are, ordering at a store. I was at a hamburger place yesterday, and so if I can type this out correctly, I asked for a cola. And yes, I know my voice is choppy, but I can't do anything about it. Sorry. There's nothing I can change. Everything's the way it always is. It might just be Discord doing something weird. Anyway, you always put a noun in front of it. And so, yeah, there are no verbs. However, you can put verbs in front of kudasai, you just don't need the o. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's jump into it. One of these is an N5 beginner level. The other one usually isn't introduced until later on, but because the formation and meaning is exactly the same, we're going to throw them together. So we've got this te. And te is not a word by itself. Usually when you see te attached to things, it is referring to the te form of the verb. And so here we've got te kudasai and te kudasaimasen ka. And these are used not to ask for something, but to ask for someone to do something. So let's practice a little bit. And, te form we've done here and there. We've done it, we've used it for a number of different ways. But let's take a few minutes to practice quickly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say a word, or type a word rather. Let's type. I'm going to type out a verb, and please give me the te form of the verb. Okay? I'll give you the verb, the base verb. So if I said taberu, you would say, or you would type what? And feel free to type in hiragana or romaji if you don't have Japanese installed or you just don't want to use it. That's both fine. Okay, what about this? If you are meeting someone, how? Okay, how about if you are writing something? Kaku. Good. If you go somewhere, iku. Now this is a special one, right? Yeah, it's ite. It's not ite. So what about this one? If you say, to say something, you. This one's also ite, correct. And harder question. Kiru, or to wear. Like if you're wearing something. So like, please put on a jacket. Please wear a jacket. Right. So what about the other one? What about the other kiru, as in to cut? Good, good. Now, if, te form isn't your strongest thing, don't forget you can go to manage your schedules on Renshu and then go to all schedules and add a verb conjugation schedule. They've got them in there and you can practice them as much as you want. So we're going to be using the te form here in front of kudasai. Note that there's no way it's not less formal or more polite or whatever if you use the O, you cannot use the O. You cannot use the O in between the verb and the kudasai. Now, you might be wondering, what's the difference between these two? Now, first, they both mean please do so and so. They're generally the standard, this take kudasai is your standard request. It's the safest one. You can use it in any situation. And there's always ways to be more formal or more humble when you ask for things, or more indirect, but your take kudasai just works everywhere. You'll hear it, 1,000 times a day if you're here in Japan. It's all over the place. And if you are taking a class or you have taken a class, then you probably hear the teacher say it repeatedly. So this is something that you could use with, family, with friends, in a work environment. There are casual ways to say, do something without the kudasai. However, kudasai doesn't sound overly stiff, not in the least. So feel free to use it. So what's this other one? This te kudasai masen ka? It means the same thing. You are still asking someone to do something. And in the sense of a request, you are expecting them to do it. However, if we were to translate it more overly literally, you might say something like this. You might translate the second one as, could you do something for me? However, it's still your request form. But if you're in a more formal situation, you're asking a boss or even a teacher, you could toss this out, and it would sound very nice. It does say a child asking an adult. I don't think children are typically this polite when they talk to adults. They probably just say take kudasai, but it would definitely be expected of an older, like a teenager addressing, someone, say, at a part-time job. You hear this a lot in job situations. So let's look at some examples. Oh, and this is a good thing to note. It doesn't explicitly say it, but I've mentioned this a lot. When you're dealing with formalities in Japanese, there's often a formality difference. And let me give you a quick example. We talked about casual verbs just a few weeks ago. And let's say you're talking to a teacher. You're a student, and Z is not how you start student. Teacher is teacher, and S is student. So the teacher might say something like this. I don't know why they'd be asking you what you ate, but let's say the teacher said, hey, what did you eat? Nani o tabeta? What would you answer? Let's say you had curry. How would you finish this sentence as a student? All right, I see a few different answers. The correct answer would be this one, tabemashita. The teacher is above you socially, in the sense of higher and lower. And so the teacher is free to use the casual form because they're talking down, not as in a condescending way, but in a social up-down sense. They're talking to someone lower than themselves. They're talking to a student. So they're free to say tabeta. In the same way that parents use that with children, teachers use it with students, it comes up. However, you as a student, you're speaking to someone at a higher level than you, socially. And so you cannot repeat and say, oh, they use tabeta, so I need to use tabeta. You need to remember, I need to be polite because they're a teacher. This is expected of me. And so you would use the tabemashita. And in the same sense here, with what's on the screen, even though a teacher may say, "Te kudasai," "Suwatte kudasai," you would not necessarily use that back with the teacher. It would probably be a better fit to say, "Te kudasaimasen ka," to respond to them. So there's a lot of things you can parrot in Japanese. If they say something, you can generally say almost the same thing that they said. However, with formality levels, it's always safer to be more formal than not. And you can't, especially if it's someone above you, you cannot necessarily repeat the level that they're using. I think it's more literally, it would be, "Won't you?" But I disagree with that translation, just because "won't you" is a bit too casual for "kudasaimasen ka." So would you go to, say for example, if you were at work and you have your boss, would you say, "Won't you look at this for me?" You probably wouldn't. In English, and there's never necessarily good one-to-one translations. In English, you might say, "Oh, could I have you look at this for me?" So it's not, I wouldn't think of it as "won't you," because that's creating a difference in the expected politeness levels of the Japanese versus the English. And it's frustrating because you see the negative and you say, "Well, I want to translate it as the negative," and say, "Oh, won't you do this?" However, "won't you" is way too casual for this thing that we're doing right here. And I see someone that's on mic, a hot mic. If you want to mute your mic, I'd appreciate it. Otherwise, I'll have to mute it so it doesn't get in the way. But again, "won't you please," I don't know how often people actually say that. And so if you want to translate that way, I wouldn't say you're wrong. I would stress, as I often stress, to not focus too much on an overly literal translation, matching the not the tense, but the positive negative conjugation of the verbs. And the reason for that, this is kind of stepping outside of our lesson just a little bit, but as we get into harder and more complex Japanese, you're going to start to see a lot of usages of the negative form that doesn't mean negative. And I can give you one example that we did do. So you could say something like this, just as an example. So with this, if you said, "Kare wa ammari tabemasen deshita," you look at that negative, and if you are focusing too strongly on the negative, you would think, "Oh, they didn't eat curry." They did, actually. Whoever said this had curry, they just didn't have very much. And this one you might say, well, you might say in English, "I didn't have much curry, but I did have some." But there are other ones that I don't get into all the examples where there are negative forms that don't mean negative at all. There's no possible way you could translate it with "not" or "don't" or "isn't" in the English form, but the Japanese uses the negative. So the sooner that you break away from the negative means negative, negative in Japanese means negative in English, the easier it will be as you get into more complex grammar. To someone that asked about te form before, there is a lesson that I definitely recommend you check it out. Te form actually doesn't mean anything. It doesn't have an inherent meaning where you can say te means this. Te is more of a construct that's used to link verbs with other things after it. Kudasai is technically a verb. It's kind of a corrupted version of a verb, but whenever you have one verb and you have another verb next to it, you have to have the te form in between them. And that's what the te form is. You can't say that it means something because it's te. So depending on what it is, it's just linked with this other verb, it means this. Linked with that verb, it means that. Linked with kudasai, it means please do this. But yes, definitely check out the lesson in Renshu. We also have the video if you want a slower look at it. Okay, let's jump back to what we're doing with the take kudasai stuff. And let's go look let's look at some examples. Now, even though we have this crazy, double verb going on at the end, the rest of the sentence is typically, the same. So let's look. The first one, please sleep, or please go to sleep. Nette kudasai. Note how you're not specifying who should go to sleep, because in almost all requests, it's whoever you're speaking to. And so there's no need to specify, who it happens to be. この本を読んでください. Please read this book. カバンを持ってください. Motsu is one of those weird words. It can be have, it can kind of be bring. It can sometimes be take with you, depending on it. But it would probably be, hold a bag, or it might even mean bring a bag. But these are all simple commands. And I don't think there's an actual sai form. I think this is just a guess. Kudasai came from kudasaimasen ka, and it got chopped down over time in the way that language just changes, over decades, over centuries. I don't believe that, unless you're talking about the nasai, which is another command form, but that has nothing to do with kudasai. They're not related in any way. But there is a nasai request form. Or not request. Oh, it is a form. So, one more example. If we were to jump up in the politeness level and, could I have you write your name? Please write your name. お名前を書いてくださいませんか? This would work. Now, note that here, even though there's the ka on the end of it, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a question. Even if we were to translate it as a question, for example, could I have you write your name? When you say that in English, I would say in most situations, you were expecting them to write their name. It is not would you like to go to the park? And they might say yes, they might say no. It's not that. It is please, could I have you write your name? And they're going to write their name in the majority of situations. And so the ka here doesn't mean a question necessarily. It's closer to a sense of weakening the command, which you often do in more formal Japanese. Instead of saying, write your name, or even please write your name, it's even weaker than that. And weakness is a way of, kind of pulling away the burden from the other person. I mean, it is a polite command. It's a very polite command. So let's practice this a little bit. I'm going to jump back to give you some examples. And note that you've got the te form, you've got the kudasai. In front of that, you can, put whatever else you want. You can put all the particles that we've used before. So you could say something like, this. 9時に学校に行ってください. At 9 o'clock, please go to the school. So you can add whatever else you want. You can even add topics. So you could say, for example, this happened to me a couple days ago. Now this is a bit, let's see. Let me change it, sorry. This is not grammar that we've learned already, but I'm trying to make it simple enough to where you can still understand it. So let's take a look at this one, and let me tell you what the words mean. Hima means free. Free as in not busy, not as in the price free, but the I'm free, my time is free. Hima na toki, toki is time, so you can probably take a guess, and that means when you're free, when you're not busy. Hima na toki wa oshiete kudasai. Please tell me when you're free. So you can even throw topics on the front of it. You could say, on Saturday, please do your homework. These all work. Now, What I'd like to do is to practice this, I'd like to do a little bit of role playing. This is very simple. I'm going to tell you a problem that I have or a situation. And please use the te kudasai form to tell me what I should do. Okay? Tell me what I should do. So, here's the first situation. I'm sad. Let's say I'm sad. I'm just down. I'm down in the dumps. Kanashii desu. And usually, if someone said they were sad, you wouldn't give them commands. You'd say, "Why don't you do this?" But let's simplify it. Let's say you're giving me commands, polite commands, because I'm sad. You want me to feel better. What should I do? Oh, and please use hiragana, or if you use kanji, add the hiragana next to it because this is a beginner's lesson. So there are people that haven't jumped into their kanji yet, which is fine. So if you use kanji, that's okay. Just put your hiragana next to it. Now I'm going to step away for just a second so I can get a drink. When I come back, we will look at some of these sentences. So we have a lot of good examples. One person said, "Naite kudasai," so please cry. Give it a good cry. Someone said, "Please laugh." Warate kudasai. Please eat something good. Someone said, "Please become happy." Okay, and easier said than done. Have some coffee, play a game, smile. The person that said "tapete o kudasai," remember you don't need that o between the two verbs. And remember, kudasai technically is a verb. So it's just "tapete kudasai." Please don't worry about it. Please watch an interesting movie. Please watch a video about cats or a video of cats, a cat video. Good. These are all excellent examples. Okay, let's switch it up. This time I'm not going to give you a problem per se. I'm going to give you, this is more of a brainstorming. Let's say you're a teacher. This is easy to think of. What are all the commands you could think of a teacher giving a student or a class of students? What are all the things that a teacher might say to students? Of course, try and write it in Japanese using the te kudasai. They don't have to be angry or anything. They could be angry. They could just be telling the students to do things that teachers normally tell students to do. So we have please stop, please be quiet, please look at something, please sit down, please practice. Now remember, we do need the te forms before kudasai. So I see two that have been done correctly. The suwaru, you would change it to te form, which would be suwatte. Suwatte kudasai. And reading, yomu, the te form is not yonte, it's yonde, the D sound. So yonde kudasai. Okay, looking good. Let's do one more. Kaze desu. I'm sick. Kaze desu. Guai warui. Doshio. What should I do? Now don't forget the te form of neru, because it's an ichidan verb. It's just nete. So we have please go to the hospital, please sleep, please drink water, please take some medicine. And I like that one because a lot of people don't pick up on this initially. But with medicine, kusuri, there's typically two main types of medicine. Medicine you drink and medicine that you don't drink. You can either chew or you take it. For example, Advil, you put the pills in your mouth and you drink it with water, but you would never say drink the Advil, right? But in Japanese, you always drink. At least, if they're referring to a specific medicine and they're specifically describing how to take that medicine, they might use different verbiage. But when you're talking about kusuri, as in just to take medicine, the generic, please take this medicine, you use nomu. Just like the person put earlier up. So I see a few more. Some people told me to have some soup, rest, drink some tea. Someone said get better, which you wouldn't say in Japanese in the same way that we say please get better. Please get better soon, kind of thing. We wouldn't say that in Japanese. The generic, I hope you feel better, I hope you get better, is either, it's one of these two, depending on the casual, which is the first one, or the more polite, which is the second one. Odaiji ni, or odaiji ni shite kudasai. So that's less of it's not a real command. You're not really saying get better. This is a request. It's it's a please get better, or I hope you get better. It's that sentiment comes across as odaiji ni. In fact, it's almost like a stock phrase when you go to, say, a hospital in Japan. They will absolutely say it to you when you leave, 100%. Same at the pharmacy, which you'll go to right after the doctors. Pharmacies in Japan it's almost like a symbiotic relationship that you often have a small clinic, and then the pharmacy is right next to the clinic. And that pharmacy can take prescriptions from other places, but probably 90% of them come from the doctor next door. So you've got really tiny clinics in Japan and very tiny pharmacies right next to them. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. We've done all the please do this, please do that. So let's flip it around. Let's tell someone to not do something. And with that one, we're going to use, you'll usually see it introduced as naide kudasai. And as to where this is coming from, where this nai is coming from, we have our negative casual forms that we used before. So, I don't eat, tabenai. I don't drink, nomanai. I don't run, hashiranai. It's that one. So we're taking the negative casual form, we're adding a de to it, and then the kudasai that we were using before. So let's look at some examples. These are, again, the formation is exactly the same. It's just, naide instead of the te form. So please don't eat the cake, or please don't have the cake. Cake yo tabenaide kudasai. Please don't read my journal or diary. Watashi no nikki o yomanaide kudasai. And a more generic, don't do that. Please don't do that. Sore o shinaide kudasai. Again, the formation is fairly simple, but we're using the nai form instead of the te form. So before we practice some full-on sentences, let's do what we did before. Instead of giving me the te form, please give me the nai form of the verbs that I tell you. Okay? So I'm trying to think of verbs that you might use when you tell someone don't do something. So that's why some of these might seem strange. What's the nai form of osu, to push? Because I tell my kids at least once a day, please don't push. Osanai. Yes. How about don't run? I put it up above, but hopefully it's out of your it's off of your monitor. So hashiru. How about this word? Sakebu. Sakebu is more to like scream or to shout. All right, let's make this a bit harder. I'm not going to give you the Japanese. I'm going to give you the English. I'm going to give you the English, okay? Touch. So how would you say, like, don't touch, as in I don't touch? Very close, very close. Which one is it? Is it re or is it ra? What do you think? Those are both actually correct words. It's just one of them means something else. So sawara, as in with the A, means to don't touch. Saware with the E sound actually means can't touch. It's the potential form. So sawaranai, sawaranai. How about if you don't need to put the de kudasai, but if you were going to tell someone to not say something, or I won't say something. Don't say. Hanasanai works. Iwanai is probably a bit closer, but hanasanai you could use as well. Iwanai, hanasanai. Hanasanai sounds more like a conversation, which would fit in certain situations. Iwanai sounds more like just that single statement. Okay, a few more. This one's a hard one because there's kind of two answers, but I'm curious if you can get both of them. Kick. What about kick? Keranai is one of them. Keru is to kick. Keranai. There's one more. I can't say with complete confidence which one is more common because you don't really hear people talking about kicking unless you're a parent and you have children. And my family is our English and Japanese is so mixed that it is somewhat difficult to tell if it's because we code switch and use English in our Japanese and vice versa, or if it's because this is indeed the most common way of saying it. Ketobasu is not probably not one that you would use. That sounds more like a kick out kind of thing, like a big kick. But my mentioning of English should be a big hint. Yeah, kick shinai. Okay, so we've got our nai forms. Let's practice with the sentences. Okay, and we'll do what we did before. We'll do a little bit of role playing, and let's do the one we did earlier. Actually, we'll do almost all the ones we did earlier. Let's be a teacher again. So you already wrote down a lot of things that a teacher might tell a student to do. What are things that a teacher would tell students to not do? So let's come up with some sentences. So you've got that nai, then you're adding the de kudasai to the end of it. Don't run, don't screw around. Don't scream. Don't play. Yep, these are all good. If you're teaching a particularly younger group of students or a rowdy group of students, you might have something like this. Now, to speak or to don't speak, it would not be hanashi. Yes, don't stand on the desks. It wouldn't be hanashi naide, it would be hanasa. Hanasa naide. Or, this is the tricky one with that sentence or that verb. There's two common ways of hearing it. You could do this. These both work. Hanashi o shinaide kudasai. And hanasanai kudasai. So when you've got that, they're both legitimate. So when you've got both of them, they can definitely get mixed up in your head. And don't sleep, of course. Okay, let's do one more. Let's change it up. Let's do it a little stranger, and let's say. Let's say this happens. Gojira ni aemasu. So you happen to meet Gojira just walking down the street. Or rather, someone else does, and you're kind of the commentator here. You're watching someone else, or maybe you're one of those people that, I'm not saying this is good or bad, that likes to tell the characters what to do, like in the movie. And so let's say you're watching a movie or you're watching a friend and they happen to run into Godzilla. What are you going to tell them to do? Maybe your friend is particularly danger prone, and if you don't say anything, Godzilla is going to blue laser them or whatever it is Godzilla does. So, first answer, don't get close. Probably good advice. Now that would, if it was run, please run, it'd be hashit. It wouldn't be hashite. That's run. You'd want to say run away, which is nigeru. But let's focus on things that we want them to not do. Since we're practicing the naide, what are things we want them to not do? Now, interestingly, I feel like kenka. Usually, when I hear kenka, which means to fight, to get in a fight. So this person's saying don't fight. Kenka, I feel, typically involves both verbal and physical. So it involves people. It can be one or the other. It can be just punching and kicking. It can be just screaming at one another. But I think when it comes to the physical altercations, there's always discussion before that. Like, hey, you ate my cake. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. Punch. And so when I see kenka shinaide kudasai, I feel like in my head, I get this picture of don't start saying bad things about Godzilla's mother and make it angry. That's the kenka that I'm picturing, in my head. If you want to mean a literal fight, as in, you see Godzilla and then you take out I don't know what kills Godzilla, a Godzilla gun, and start firing at it, it would probably be more of this verb, tatakao. So tatakawanai kudasai. But also not making fun of Godzilla and making them want to fight is also probably good advice. Oh, one person said don't wave. I would not recommend waving. Okay. It seems like you all have the have the feel for this. Excuse me. This is not listed in the lesson, but let me just, since we have time, let me go ahead and mention to you that I said one thing earlier that, while not wrong, maybe made some of you say, I'm not sure that's right. And I said with the te form is always used to link a verb to another verb. And some of you might have thought, wait, I've seen the te form used by itself. So I've heard people say, and since we're talking about the negative commands, I've heard people say this. Shinaide, don't do that. And you might be thinking, well, there's a te form all by itself. This form is actually a contraction of the form that we're talking about right now. So shinaide is actually a contraction of shinaide kudasai. It makes it more casual. So if shinaide kudasai is please don't do that, shinaide is don't do that. So it's stronger, it's more forceful, and it's not that the te form is by itself. It's that it had another verb and they just, to make it more casual or to make it stronger, they drop that verb out. But the te form always comes together with another verb. But if you are in a situation where you need someone to do something and you're a bit upset with them, or they're below you, you're talking to kids, or more casually with friends and whatnot, you can drop the kudasai off the end of it. But like I said, you're never going to go wrong with kudasai. It's not polite to the point of being stuffy or formal. It's just nice. My wife still uses that when she asks me to do things. But if you hear that te form all by itself, what I want you to think of is oh, they're asking them to do something. They're just being more casual. They're dropping this kudasai off at the end of it. And with that, it brings us to the end of our lesson today. Just to let you know, as I mentioned before, we will have this up on Renshu and inside of our Discord, hopefully later today. So if you need to take a look at this and, look at it more slowly to let it all sink in, feel free to do so. And the lesson that we looked at today, you can always get to it inside of Renshu's menu. Just go to resources and then Japanese lessons, and it will be inside here. Right here towards the beginning of the beginner section, making requests. And there will be a little icon here when it's available. So thank you so much for coming, and I hope to see you next week. Thank you.